Welcome. I'm glad you're here. My name is Kiara, and I'm the owner of Sagebrush Psychotherapy, which is a therapy practice in Los Angeles, California. I specialize in treating suicidality, among other topics. And today I'm going to be discussing a topic that I'm deeply passionate about, which is chronic suicidality. So first, I want to clarify what it is that I mean by chronic. So I'm going to start off with acute suicidality, which occurs during a state of crisis. Frequently, it follows a big life change, something like a breakup or a job loss or a traumatic event. It's quite intense, usually, typically short-lived, and that's something that requires crisis intervention, immediate crisis intervention. Chronic suicidality, on the other hand, is something that is enduring. It can begin in childhood or adolescence. Sometimes people have made multiple suicide attempts. And for these individuals, suicidal thoughts aren't just tied to a specific crisis, they become a pervasive part of their mental health struggles. So, what are the potential origins of chronic suicidality? One way that I've seen clients develop suicidal ideation is growing up in a painful childhood environment, particularly ones where you have unmet needs from your parents or direct caregivers. As children, the reality is that we don't really have a means to heavily influence our environment. For example, we don't choose where we live or what we eat for dinner. We are heavily dependent on our direct caregivers for our day-to-day functioning. And so when attempts to influence our caregivers or our environment don't work out, there can be this profound sense of hopelessness. So, for instance, in order to meet your unmet needs as a child, you can try to become the perfect child. And then when this doesn't resolve itself, there's this sense of, well, what else can I do? Of course, this isn't black and white, and children do have means of coping and, for example, can receive support outside of their home. But largely, the individuals that I work with feel stuck, trapped, and helpless in their childhood due to these unmet needs. And then to resolve this concept of suicide develops as an option. And there is a sort of a sense of validation in that because, as I said, our locus of control as a child is limited to a certain degree. Again, heavy emphasis on the like, it's not black and white. There are, things that you can do even as a child to influence your life and your environment. But to validate this suicidality that can occur, I just want to emphasize, yeah, it can feel like there's nothing else that you can do. Another potential origin of suicidal ideation is what I call the myth of the inherently flawed self. This can show up as this pattern of, oh, if I could just fix this about myself, everything would be okay. But this is a target that's constantly moving. Perhaps the problem is resolved, but it's not good enough, or the individual keeps coming up with new problems. Well, okay, this is a problem. This is bad about me, and I need to fix this. Another way that this shows up is unresolvable issues, this pattern of no matter what you try, whether it be therapy or certain techniques, you can't seem to make the changes that you want to change. These two examples are not mutually exclusive. And as with the previous example that I gave, they lend themselves to a state of hopelessness. When it seems like nothing can resolve your pain, if it can feel like suicide is the only solution. So how then does this original concept of suicide become chronic? The two potential origins are important in the development of chronic suicidality, because of their enduring nature. In both situations, you feel like you can't impact your environment or change your circumstances. So these belief systems lie deep within the psychology. They impact behaviors and, as I mentioned, lead to this state of consistent hopelessness. Another component in the development of chronic suicidality that is really important is this temporary relief that suicidal ideation provides. And that acts as a reinforcer for this thought pattern and any accompanying behavior. Imagining death or suicide can create a sense of problem solving. It can be a form of a resolution. It's a way to escape and perhaps avoid the difficulties that you're dealing with. So with these thoughts of, oh, there's an end and I can formulate this end, there's this lowering of emotional distress. As I mentioned, the sense of relief, and then that perpetuates this coping method. Suicidal ideation can also act as a get out of jail free card. It becomes a fallback option, sort of this, if things get too hard, I can always kill myself. And then in this way, suicidal thoughts become a way to cope with life. And it's something that you keep in your back pocket, have attachment to, and hold on to as an out. Like there's always an out. So how do we interrupt this cycle? How do we decrease suicidal ideation? And this is what I would call taking suicide off the table. We can accept and tolerate the habitual suicidal thoughts that come up, understand the origins, as I alluded to before, have compassion for the pain that led to the culmination of the conceptualization of suicide and then the patterns that created the chronicity. But at the same time, removing suicide as an option allows you to actually solve your problems and build a life worth living. Now I'm going to read a quote from Marsha Linehan, who is the creator of dialectical behavior therapy. The desire to commit suicide, however, has its base in a belief that life cannot or will not improve. Although that may be the case in some instances, it is not true in all instances. Death, however, rules out hope in all instances. We do not have any data indicating that people who are dead lead better lives. This really highlights this concept that I said of like taking suicide off the table, thus giving you the ability to address the pain head on, make those changes, and thus build a life worth living. Marsha Linehan, as I mentioned, the creator of dialectical behavior therapy, or DBT, created this treatment method, and it is the most effective and a very well-researched treatment for suicidality. And I'm going to include in that chronic suicidality. The approach is specifically designed to help individuals manage intense emotions, reduce suicidal behaviors, and build a life that they feel is worth living. In DBT therapy, you'll learn techniques to navigate painful emotions and challenges in a way that feels empowering. So over time, this work builds confidence that you can handle what life throws at you without needing an escape plan, thus resolving the need for having suicide as an option. As one of my clients put it, she said, "I know I have DBT. I don't have to be scared anymore." Additionally, your therapist can help you untangle your self-concept and your beliefs about yourself, the world, and others. By working with a therapist, you can begin to break down these persistent patterns of thought and behavior and replace them with healthier and more compassionate views of yourself and the world. The core dialectic in DBT is a simultaneous complete acceptance of yourself while holding a desire for change. One starting point for this is the reminder that you are doing the best that you can, and you can also do better. Thus, DBT therapy is about developing self-compassion and making changes. It's important to acknowledge that removing suicide as an option does not invalidate the pain or the struggle behind those thoughts. It makes sense that in times of intense distress, someone might have thoughts of suicide or wish there was a way to make it all go away. However, when suicide is no longer on the table, it opens up new possibilities. Instead of focusing on not being suicidal, therapy shifts to the focus on how to live. Facing life without this fallback plan of, if it gets bad, I can always kill myself, can perhaps be scary, or there might be this attachment to suicide, or a sense of relationship to suicide. But I've seen so many people make this transformation, and I've witnessed their strength, and their ability to rebuild their lives in ways that perhaps at times they thought were impossible. If you're living with chronic suicidal thoughts, know that I believe in your courage and resilience. Know that I've witnessed clients take this journey and resolve this ineffective pattern. Therapy can help you learn to tolerate painful emotions, rebuild your self-concept, and create a life that feels worth living.